Welcome back. It's the third day of the Sean Diddy Combs trial here in New York City, where Casandra Ventura will take the stand for a second day to continue questioning from the prosecution. As a quick recap from yesterday, Cassie shared the humiliating and intimate details of her relationship with Sean Diddy Combs during a 10-year period. Today, the prosecution will finish up their questioning before the cross-examination begins. But before we get started, I'd like to issue a trigger warning. Viewer discretion is advised. There are some sensitive topics being discussed in today's video that maybe is not appropriate for children, as well as some adults who have gone through similar experiences. So just a heads up. Court's in session. Let's begin. So the session begins, and they go back to this shocking footage that was released of Diddy going after Cassie in the hotel. So now the prosecutors go through this footage frame by frame, in which the prosecution opens up and says, "Who enters?" Cassie says, "Sean." Prosecutor says, "What's in his hand?" And she says, "He doesn't appear to have anything in his hand." And then the prosecutor plays and then asks, "Now anything in his hand?" And she says, "My phone." And then she was asked, "Well, how did he get it?" And Ventura says, "Well, he took all of my stuff." And they begin to ask him where he ends up. And Ventura says, sitting in a chair in front of the window. And she says that she's walking away from him. Of then which the prosecutor asks, "Who's now with you in the video?" And she says, "Me and security." And from there, Cassie said she left the hotel, took an Uber back to her house. Now, from there, the prosecution shifts the attention to these text messages, and the jurors are being shown this conversation between Sean Diddy Combs and Cassie after the attack at the Intercontinental Hotel in Los Angeles. The jurors are also shown a photo of Cassie wearing dark glasses and a hoodie. Cassie explains, "That is me with a fat lip." The prosecution asks why she is wearing sunglasses, and she tells the court she had a black eye. So in this text exchange between Cassie and Diddy, Cassie tells him, "Please stay away from me." And then Combs writes back and says, "I'm getting arrested." And the prosecutor asks, "Was he getting arrested?" And Cassie says, "I don't think so." Then the prosecutor proceeds to ask, "What did you write back?" Cassie says, "Plugging my phone in and going to bed." The prosecutor asks, "Who was at your home when you got there?" Cassie replies, "Carrie Morgan. She was upset when she saw me. She called the police." Prosecutor asks, "Did you speak with them?" Cassie replies, "Yes, but I didn't say who I was talking about, and they left." Prosecutor asks, "Why?" Cassie replies, "I wasn't ready." Prosecutor Johnson then goes on to ask, "Did Sean try to come to your apartment?" Cassie says, "Yes, he was banging. That was pretty normal for him, but this is a pretty private building." "Did you hear from Miss Corrin that day?" Cassie says, "Yes, and I went to see D-Rock and his wife to try to feel safe." Next up, the prosecution shows a photo and asks Cassie what she's wearing. Ventura replies, "A gown and sunglasses. I had a black eye." Prosecution asks, "What if any other bruising was visible?" Cassie says, "I had several bruises on my leg, but I changed clothes." Prosecution points, "What is this?" She says, "Me and Sean at the after party." Prosecutor Johnson then says, "I'm going to show you escorts. Do you know the name of this person?" Cassie says, "No." "In what cities did you use him?" Cassie says, "New York." Prosecutor asks, "Who's this?" Ventura responds, "Islander. He was on Latin Men. We used him in LA and maybe Vegas." The prosecutor then points to a few more, and Cassie identifies them and then proceeds to ask Cassie, "What did you write here?" And Cassie replies, "This is all we do. I'm just getting back on track. I'm sure you can call Kim or something." And the prosecutor asks her, "What do you mean by this is all we do?" Cassie then says, "Freak-offs." Cassie was then asked if she was trying to avoid anything in the freak-offs, and Cassie said, "I tried to avoid kissing. It seems too intimate, but Sean told me to do it, to kiss the escorts." She was then asked if she had intimate relations with all the men, and she says yes. She's not sure if they were all paid, but adds that Those who were paid with Combs's money. Cassie then says Sean had asked her to do a freak off on her 29th birthday, in which she said, I told him I wanted to stay out and celebrate with my friends. In mind, I didn't want to have the burden of doing that night. The couple had gone to the Blind Dragon Club for karaoke with her friends, but Combs pulled her out of the festivities so many times that she just gave up, Cassie told jurors. She said they left and went to have a freak off. And she mentioned that these freak offs were being used as blackmail material. And the reason why he did that was because he wanted her to fear him. And what that meant was using it as control. Cassie explains that one time she was dating someone else and he threatened to release the freak off videos. She says, I'd have to answer to my mother. It's horrible and disgusting. No one should do that to anyone. The prosecutor asks, what did Sean say the impact would be? Cassie replies, shame. In Cassie's own words, sex videos, things that made me look not great. Cassie went on to say that Combs would remind her of them if he was angry or upset about something. It was pretty much a common thing. She says, it could ruin everything I work for, make me look like a slut. I wasn't supposed to be on those videos. I didn't want to be in them. The prosecution goes into the next set of questions, which Johnson asks, how would you recover from a freak-off? Cassie replies, I take opiates. I wanted to feel numb. We get massages, IV fluids. The chef would cook us something. Prosecutor asks, how often did you take opiates after freak-offs? Cassie replies, often. I got urinary tract infections. Prosecutor then asks, were the UTIs painful? Cassie replies, very. Antibacterials didn't work anymore. Prosecutor then says, how did it feel during freak-offs? Cassie says, burning. I would not advise it. Prosecutor then says, let's read this out loud. Cassie proceeds to read this out loud by saying, I have all these sores on my tongue. I have another UTI. Prosecutor asks, what sores? Cassie replies, friction in my mouth. From what? Cassie says, oral sex. Prosecutor then proceeds to say, you said another UTI, then a sad face emoji. Cassie then says, I was open with him about them. After a freak-off, Cassie said she would feel so tired, achy, dehydrated, and that she felt emotionally empty and gross, like I did a job. Questioning in court now moves to talking about these intimate relations clubs, or SEX clubs, with Cassie saying she visited a few with Combs during their 11-year relationship in New York, Las Vegas, and Los Angeles. Cassie says that these visits were his idea and she was vocal about not wanting to go. Cassie says he would try to turn the energy around and become playful and funny and not scary, but other times he would push and try to convince me. Prosecutor asks which escort would go to the SEX clubs with you and Sean. Cassie says Jules. Prosecutor confirms the escort from the Intercontinental in LA. Cassie says yes. Did you want to have intimate relations with Jules ever? Cassie says no, laughs. But I knew him. Prosecutor asks, why did you do it? Cassie replies, Sean. The prosecution then asks who was present when Sean put his hands on you at the freak-offs. Cassie replies, sometimes the escort was there too. In the same room? Cassie says, yes, Jules. And in the suite? Yes. Were they aware? Cassie says yes. Cassie then goes on to say that the escorts would ask her if she was okay afterwards. When asked by prosecutors how often Combs would injure her during these freak-offs, Cassie said, too often. Ms. Ventura then goes on to testify about another alleged assault by Sean Diddy Combs when he attacked her inside her apartment before they were to leave to attend Drake's annual OVO festival in Toronto in 2013. Cassie was later seen at the festival with the rapper French Montana, where she said she purposely styled her hair to cover up the injury. She recalled being at her apartment with two friends when Combs allegedly entered the room and began yelling about her sleeping on the couch instead of packing. She testified that two of her friends had jumped on his back when Combs tried to attack her, before he eventually attacked her. Cassie says, "When he threw me down, I cut my eyebrows not on the corner of my bed," she said. The jury was shown a photo of Ventura's busted left eyebrow, which showed a massive bloodied gash. She goes on to say that Combs later had security bring her to a plastic surgeon's office in Beverly Hills to suture the gash. She texted Combs a picture of the wound and wrote, "So you can remember." So then after this trip in Toronto, they head to the Hamptons, in which, of course, once again, Sean wanted to have a freak off in the Hamptons. So Cassie says, "We got a hotel and an escort." Prosecutor asks, "Which one?" Cassie replies, "Dave. I took GHB. I went into a G-hole and blacked out. I woke up nude in the shower. Dave and Sean were freaking out. I bugged out. It wasn't pretty." Prosecutor then shows Cassie and asks, "What's this?" And Ventura says, "My eyebrow. Healed up a little bit a week later. I have a permanent scar on my eyebrow." Prosecutor points and says, "What's this?" Cassie says, "Me at the Cannes Festival." Then the prosecutor asks, "What happened at Cannes?" Cassie then says, "Sean accused me of taking mind-altering substances from his boat. He threw me off, but my passport was still on the boat." Prosecutor then asks, "And you were on the red carpet that same night?" Cassie says yes. The prosecution then asks, "How did you get back to New York?" Cassie replies, "On a commercial flight. I traded my seat to get away, but he traded to get next to me." Prosecution then asks, "What did he show you?" And Cassie replies, "Freak-off videos. He played them for me on one of his laptops. He said he would release them." The prosecution then asks, "How did that make you feel?" Cassie replied, "Trapped." "When you landed in New York, what did you do?" said the prosecutor. Cassie says, "We went to dinner. Then he wanted to have a freak-off, so we had a freak-off." Prosecution asks, "Why did you do it?" And Cassie says, "To make him not threaten me." And at that point, the court broke for lunch. As court resumes from lunch, prosecutor Emily Johnson has handed out binders to the judge and also the defense containing still images taken from the videos of the freak-off intimate sessions that have been mentioned throughout the trial. The jury is shown the X-rated freak-off images hidden from public, as Cassie matter-of-factly IDs escorts herself in explicit pics. 5 images taken from the freak-off videos were shown to jurors, causing one panelist to purse her lips and another male juror to shake his head. Cassie told jurors about the slew of people who witnessed Sean Diddy Combs beat her up throughout their tumultuous 11-year relationship. Cassie described to the jurors the first time Sean Diddy Combs got rough with her. Cassie said she shrugged her shoulders at Combs after she saw him flirting with someone else inside a restaurant, and then he retaliated against her once they got in the car. She said, "When we got into the car, he knocked me around." Cassie said they were inside an Escalade SUV and Combs' security guard and driver were there for the vicious beating. "He hit me on the side of the head. He knocked me the floor of the car." She said she was shocked and didn't understand why Combs had gotten so angry. Cassie described another time when they were driving in an Escalade in Los Angeles and she hit Combs for calling her a name, slut or bitch or something. Combs' eyes went black and he started stomping on my face with his foot. Cassie recalls that the ride lasted 10 minutes and Combs was attacking her as she tried to defend and cover herself. Cassie said, "I'd never experienced anything like that when I was really badly roughed up." She said she bolted down the street, but Combs' security guard caught up to her. Once inside Combs' house, she looked at herself in the mirror. The court is then told about an email Cassie wrote to her mother and another woman who worked with Sean Combs. It said the rapper had threatened to release 2 compromising tapes of her and also that he could organize for someone to hurt her. The jury was then shown photos of Cassie's bruised back and legs that her mother took. When asked if she was open and honest about the abuse at Combs's hands, she responded, "No, I told her it was the first time." Cassie also said she didn't tell her mom about the freak-offs the Bad Boy Records founder regularly made her take part in. "I couldn't hurt her like that," Cassie said. "It's not normal, constantly being bruised up by the person that loves you or who says they love you." In one witness eye account, Cassie testifies she saw Diddy drag his assistant during a trip to Turks and Caicos. Cassie had said on one day of the trip, after they'd been smoking and partying on the beach, Combs went to the assistant's room and dragged her outside. Cassie goes on to say, "I think she was falling asleep. He tried grabbing her phone. He dragged her out of the bed and onto the desk outside of her room." Cassie said on that trip there had been a freak-off. Cassie referred to the assistant as Mia, who is apparently the same woman expected to testify at trial anonymously under the pseudonym Mia. Prosecutors alleged during opening statements that Mia worked for Combs for years as his personal assistant and that he forced her to perform oral, intimate acts on him and then raped her as well, allegedly. Now, at this time, Cassie's husband has left the room per the court's recommendation. So the prosecutor, Emily Johnson, begins to ask Ms. Ventura how her relationship with Sean Combs came to an end, and Cassie replies by telling the court that by the end she had spent several years hearing about a woman Combs was dating, and she was just done. Cassie says that her and Combs met in August of 2018 to have a closure conversation at a restaurant in Malibu. Cassie says that she was seeing Alex Fine, her now husband, at that point. Cassie recounts that at the restaurant in Malibu, Combs was being really nice, playful, laughing, kind of romantic vibes. But when he dropped her home afterwards, he came inside her home, and that's when he raped her. Cassie says, "I just remember crying and saying no, but it was very fast." She says Combs' eyes went black, and he didn't even notice that she was crying. After, she said, he got up and left. And at the time of the alleged rape, Cassie had started dating her current husband, Alex Fine, with whom she shares 2 children and is expecting a third. Prosecutor then asks, "Did you ever have intimate relations with Diddy again?" Cassie says, "Yes, voluntarily. We had a good night. I went back to his house." Prosecutor then asks, "Can you explain why you did that after he raped you?" Cassie's explanation, "We had been together for 10 years. Cassie says, "You just don't turn off feelings that way. I still had a good vision of who he was." The court then hears she later went to rehab and had trauma therapy. Cassie says she was having flashbacks and did not want to lie anymore. She also tells the court she wanted Combs to understand what she had been through, to recognize the things he put me through. More than anything, it was personal shame. About the freak-off sex sessions, she says, "I took on a lot of responsibility for that I never should have." The court then hears she took part in hundreds of these freak-offs. Ms. Ventura breaks down in tears as she tells the court she was 22 when these sessions started, and she says she would have done anything for Combs. The court hears about Ms. Ventura's civil lawsuit, which she filed in November 2023. It was settled within 24 hours, and she received $20 million. And finally, she is asked by prosecutor Emily Johnson why she is testifying against him now and putting herself through what has been a difficult process. Cassie replies and says, "I can't carry this anymore. The shame, the guilt. What's right is right, and what's wrong is wrong. People aren't disposable." Prosecutor Emily Johnson has now finished her questions. Cross-examination was due to start today, but with just over half an hour of court time left, the judge says it makes sense to leave it until tomorrow. So my personal take on this, I'm a little concerned, especially after 3 days, and we have yet to address the actual trafficking and the racketeering. What I was expecting, or at least hoping to see from the prosecution, was asking questions about seeing other people. So she talked a lot about these so called freak offs and the abuse that Cassie had gone through. Now, this is a sucky situation. And yes, Diddy is a wretched man. But does that fall into the category of the crimes that he's actually being accused of? I'm not necessarily feeling that. Now, again, we're not actually seeing this court case go on in real time. So all of us are at the mercy of the reporting that's going on. And as a side note, I just want to say it's a bit challenging to follow a case like this, especially when you don't have the ability to see and hear the actual court case directly, and you have to be reliant on third parties to report the accuracy of what's going on in that room. This case is supposed to be about racketeering, trafficking, and other funky stuff that the government had been looking into. But today and yesterday in Cassie's testimony, all I heard, and it's unfortunate that this happened to her, but more of a domestic abuse type situation rather than those illegal affairs that have been going on. What didn't come across, and I can't be certain if it wasn't talked about. I mean, I've been looking at other sources to see if there had been anything mentioned about if Cassie saw other people involved with these so-called freak-offs. I mean, the prosecutor was really fixated on making sure the jury saw what these freak-offs were about, but I didn't get the impression that there were other people involved aside from Cassie, Diddy, and these escorts. Now, there is something that I do want to bring up from yesterday's video, and that is the comments that were being made about Cassie and her being with Diddy for 10 years. Like, why didn't she just walk away? Or she knew what she was getting into. I don't think any of us are in a position to judge Cassie on why she allowed Diddy to do what he did to her, as well as why did she stay with him for so many years on and off, as well as even this last moment that she testified and said that he raped her and then she went back and she was intimate with him afterwards. Like, that's something we'll never understand based off of the psychological abuse that she had taken for so long. The thing that's troubling is that tomorrow in the cross-examination, Diddy's defense is going to go all in and say, well, your emotions took over. You stayed with him because you loved him. That has nothing to do with racketeering or trafficking. What I'm finding really hard to understand is why is it that Cassie is choosing to say that she was raped by Diddy in the closure meeting when she was a part of many instances in these freak-offs where either she was incapacitated, took medication to numb herself because she didn't want to be doing it, or was in serious pain but was being forced to do this out of fear. Like, how is that not considered raping? The other thing that I find really troubling about this is that Cassie is supposed to be the star witness, and if out of the gate this is what the prosecution is bringing, then to me it feels like this is a case that is going to be thrown on purpose to protect the Democrat elite. And the reason why I say that is because on the prosecution side, James Comey's daughter is a part of the prosecution team. For those that don't know who James Comey is, he was the director of the FBI right before Trump got into office, and he was the one that did confirm that Hillary Clinton was reckless with her emails, but he brought no charges against her. Between knowing this and the judge that was appointed by Biden, right now, I'm not feeling too confident that justice is going to prevail. And once again, we're going to see this criminal who should be behind bars for the rest of his life go free. That's the concern that I have, especially with what I'm seeing over the last 3 days. And then we have on Diddy's side, we have Mark Garagos' daughter representing Diddy. Now, for those that don't know who Mark Garagos is, he was the celebrity lawyer who represented O.J. Simpson. Now, tomorrow is the cross-examination, but I feel like Cassie gave enough for the defense team to be able to come back and make it about the actual relationship and feelings, not so much the criminal activity. So if you're interested in following this along with me, go ahead and like this video and subscribe to this channel because I will be back to see what happens tomorrow in this cross-examination. Is this going to be a complete dumpster fire? I don't know. We'll just have to see. Anyhow, leave your thoughts below and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.